Hey guys, tonight we're setting sail, not on a cruise, not on a lazy riverboat, but on a Roman warship. Picture it, the faint creak of wood soaked with centuries of salt, the slap of the sea against a hull that somehow floats despite everything, and the chorus of groaning oarsmen already regretting their life choices. You're about to spend a week aboard a Roman trireme, a triple-decker galley powered by human sweat, guided by shouted Latin, and destined for discomfort. You'll row, you'll sleep on planks, and you'll learn more than you ever wanted to know about communal hygiene. Spoiler alert, you probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop a comment with your location and what time it is for you right now. Always curious where in the world you're listening from. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing on the dock, and already you feel out of place. The warship in front of you towers like some long wooden beast, narrow, sleek, bristling with oars that jut out like angry insect legs. You smell tar, salt, sweat, and something else, something vaguely like boiled cabbage and regret. A centurion shouts your name, mangles it, and waves you forward with the sort of enthusiasm usually reserved for pest control. You step onto the gangplank. It's slick, worn down by thousands of sandaled feet, and sways just enough to make your stomach lurch. One wrong move and you're getting your first Roman bath in the harbor sludge. Below deck, things don't get better. The ship's interior is dim, damp, and low-ceilinged. Perfect if you're a goblin. You find your assigned rowing bench, which is less bench and more slab of misery. Your oar leans beside it, taller than you, splintered at the edges like it's seen one too many bad days. Which, frankly, it has. You sit. The wood's hard and unwelcoming. A man to your left grunts without looking at you. The guy on your right is chewing something. You're not sure what. You don't want to ask. Soon, the ship begins to move. Ropes hauled in, sails unfurled for now, until rowing is needed. You're gently pushed away from land, and with it, away from the comfort of solid ground, sensible meals, and toilets with privacy. Above deck, seagulls cry overhead, possibly laughing at you. One of your shipmates taps you with his elbow and mutters something about finding your sea legs. You nod, then promptly trip over your own feet. Welcome to life at sea. By evening, the ship settles into its rhythm. The crew moves like clockwork, officers barking orders, rowers groaning in unison, and someone constantly fixing something with rope and curses. You hear the steady beat of the navigation drum. It's oddly hypnotic, like a slow heartbeat that demands obedience. 1, 2, pull. 1, 2, pull. Up close, the ship's construction is fascinating. Oak and fir, mostly, lashed together with iron nails and animal sinew. The Romans are proud of their shipwrights, and, to be fair, it hasn't sunk yet, so that's a win. You run your fingers along the hull as you pass by. It's rough, stained, and oddly warm under your palm from the sun. There's a moment of quiet that night. You sneak above deck and stand by the rail, letting the ocean breeze cool your face. The moon reflects off the waves like silver poured onto velvet. For a second, it's almost peaceful. Then someone behind you vomits loudly into the sea. The spell breaks. Sleep is a challenge, but more on that later. For now, you lay your head back against your sack of gear, feet still damp, and try to ignore the sounds around you. The ship creaks. The waves lap. Somewhere nearby, someone snores like a dying walrus. You close your eyes and ask yourself the same question every new recruit asks: what did I do to deserve this? The funny thing? You volunteered. You wake up sore in places you didn't know existed. Your back, your legs, even your ribs. Apparently, rowing uses muscles that modern humans have replaced with sitting. There's a faint light peeking through the hatch above, but otherwise, it's just you, your fellow oarsman, and the lingering scent of salted sweat and damp rope. You slept, if you can call it that, curled up awkwardly against the ship's frame. No mattress, no cushion, just you and a piece of timber that may or may not have termites. Roman warships weren't designed for comfort. They were designed for speed, intimidation, and the occasional dramatic entrance into a harbor. Sleep was a bonus, a rare one. You stretch, but immediately regret it. Your head bumps the low ceiling. You sit up too fast and crack your elbow on the bench. Welcome to day 2. Sleeping arrangements are, to put it generously, democratic. Everyone gets roughly the same amount of space, not quite enough for lying flat, not quite enough for sitting upright. Think hostile bunk beds, but subtract the mattress, the wall, the privacy, and the concept of hygiene. You grab your belongings, your travel pack, half-empty water skin, and the little cloth bundle someone told you to use as a pillow. It smells faintly of olives and mildew now. Lovely. Around you, the crew is already stirring. A few groan as they uncurl from their twisted sleep poses. One guy rolls over and immediately faceplants into someone else's foot. Nobody reacts. This is normal. There's no official wake-up call, but you know when it's time. The boots of the deckmaster thud across the floorboards above, a few drops of water rain down from the seams, and then you hear the unmistakable clatter of buckets being dragged out for cleaning. That's your cue. Breakfast is not exactly served, it's more distributed. You shuffle toward the central crate, where a sleepy officer hands out dry rations with all the enthusiasm of someone handing out parking fines. Today's offering: hardtack, basically stale crackers, a few olives, and some suspiciously chewy cheese. You bite into the hardtack. Mistake. Your teeth vibrate. You try again. Still no give. You soak it in water. It becomes a soggy mess. You eat it anyway. And that's when you realize this is your reality for the next 6 days. You take a sip from your water skin. Lukewarm, slightly metallic, but it's water, sort of. One of your rowmates complains his tastes like fish. No one is surprised. You try to go back to your spot to rest a little longer, but someone's already taken it. You don't argue. He's twice your size and currently using your pillow cloth as a foot rag. You move on. Later, you get your first glimpse of a Roman sailor's attempt at comfort. A man near the prow has ingeniously strung a hammock from 2 of the upper deck beams. He's not supposed to, and technically he's in the way of the sail storage, but no one dares challenge him, mostly because he has a very large scar and a dagger he sharpens while humming softly. You make a mental note to befriend that guy. Meanwhile, rats scurry underfoot. Tiny, quick, fearless. They've lived on this ship longer than some of the officers. One of them sits on a barrel and watches you eat. You stare back. He doesn't blink. This is his ship. You're just visiting. As you explore the below-deck maze of crates, ropes, and suspicious puddles, you overhear some veterans talking about sleep tricks. One swears by soaking his feet in seawater before bed. Another claims sleeping on your left side keeps the ship's spirits from poking you. Historians still argue whether such traditions had any real basis, or were just desperate men trying to make unbearable nights slightly more bearable. You eventually find a quiet corner near the stern where a small group of veterans have carved dice games into the wood. They invite you to play. You lose. Then you realize they've been playing with weighted stones. You pretend to laugh. They pretend not to notice. It's a bonding moment. As the day fades and the oars are stowed for now, the ship rocks gently, just enough to lull your senses into a daze. You lie back again, this time with a thin folded cloth under your head and a coil of rope at your feet, hoping it'll keep the rats at bay. A gull cries overhead. Someone snores again. You sigh. At least the stars are pretty. The drumbeat starts before sunrise. Not the pleasant kind of drum you might hear in a sleepy Roman courtyard at dusk. No. This is the sharp, insistent boom boom that tells your aching body it's time to start rowing. Or else. You jolt upright, head thudding against the beam above you again. Your arms feel like someone replaced your bones with wet towels. You stretch, sort of, and shuffle to your station. It's still dark. No one is talking. Just the occasional cough, the creak of wood, and the low groan of 30 men trying to pretend this is fine. You slide onto the bench. The oar is already damp. Of course it is. The drum picks up. Faster now. The hortator, the man responsible for keeping rhythm, stands tall on the deck above, pounding his stick against stretched hide like he's trying to summon lightning. You've only been at sea 2 days, and already you hate that man's entire family tree. Rowing on a Roman warship isn't elegant. It isn't even particularly efficient. It's more like synchronized suffering. You grip your oar, plant your feet, and begin the rhythm. Pull, return, over and over again. Your body protests immediately. Blisters scream, shoulders groan. Your lower back files a formal complaint. This is where you start to understand the mechanics of misery. The trireme, like most Roman galleys, runs on muscle. 3 tiers of rowers. You're in the middle. Lucky you. You're not the lowest, where rats and puddles reign, but not high enough to catch much breeze either. Just enough air to smell everything, not enough to cool you off. The man in front of you fumbles his oar rhythm, and your blade crashes into his. The hortator stops. The drumbeat halts. Everyone stares. You both mutter apologies. He glares at you like you just sank his mother's dinghy. You row harder to make up for it. Not because you care, but because the officer watching has a stick and an excellent throwing arm. You try to focus. Some veterans sing under their breath to pass the time, snatches of bawdy verses, half-remembered prayers, or weird chants in dialects you can't place. One man swears he once rode beside a guy who could predict the weather by sniffing his armpits. Historians still argue whether such tales were exaggeration or sheer heat stroke. Your hands begin to form deep red lines, blisters. You think about your life back on land, how much you took chairs for granted, cushions, sweet, sweet cushions. The drumbeat slows. The order is given. Pause oars. The trireme glides forward, slicing water like a dagger through silk. Everyone slumps forward, panting. You're too tired to even wipe the sweat that's rolling down your nose. Break time means maybe 5 minutes of pretending your spine isn't permanently damaged. A water skin is passed around, warm again, and suspiciously tangy. Someone jokes it's fermented. No one laughs. One of the older sailors leans back and shares a story about a storm off Massalia, when a gust snapped the mast and the ship spun for hours. He says they made it to shore by rowing non-stop for 3 days. A younger recruit asks if anyone died. The old man nods. Mostly from boredom. That gets a chuckle. Just one. Quiet. But it feels like a victory. The next rowing session is longer. Your world becomes the beat, the splash, the creak. You try to trick your mind into a trance. Pull, return, pull, return. like a metronome carved from bone and sweat. You think about quitting, just jumping into the sea and floating home. But then you remember you can't swim. Minor detail. One of the junior officers walks by with a tablet, noting names and performance. He glances at you, raises an eyebrow, scribbles something. You imagine it reads, "Doesn't cry yet." Eventually, you reach a small coastal inlet. The sails are raised, and you're allowed to rest. For a moment, the sun hits the water just right, and you forget how miserable you are. The sea shimmers like molten coin. A dolphin leaps nearby. You smile, just barely. Then someone sneezes directly onto your arm. Back to reality. That evening, while trying to massage the knots from your thighs, you overhear an argument between two crewmen about whether Neptune or Jupiter is in charge of ocean travel. They each cite old tales, shrines visited, and childhood omens. One man says his mother offered salted bread to a fish once, and that's why his family never drowned. You nod solemnly. Totally checks out. You fall asleep with your arms still twitching from phantom oar movements. In your dreams, you row uphill, chased by a seagull in a toga. The sea rocks you gently to sleep. By now, the idea of breakfast has become theoretical. You're not expecting pancakes or even warm gruel. But what lands in your lap this morning can barely be classified as food. A small, cracked bowl of barley mash, gray, slightly lumpy, with the texture of wet gravel, and a side of pickled fish that stares at you like it just lost a bet. You sigh. This is fine. The trick, apparently, is to chew fast and think of figs. You sit on a crate near the stern, rocking slightly with the motion of the ship, and attempt to eat without gagging. The barley is sour. The fish is saltier than gossip in a Roman bathhouse, and someone nearby insists on narrating every bite like it's a wine tasting. Ah, yes, notes of mildew and hopelessness. Roman warships didn't stock luxury rations. The food was meant to keep you alive, barely, and keep you rowing. It had to be light, non-perishable, and preferably something that wouldn't cause mass food poisoning at sea. Though judging by the pale green tinge on one man's biscuit, that last part was flexible. A nearby crewman is stirring something in a pot over a small metal brazier. You inch closer. It smells marginally better, like lentils maybe. He glances at you and scoops out a dollop with a grim smile. You thank him and sit back down, tasting it slowly. It's hot. That alone makes it gourmet. You almost enjoy it until you bite into something that crunches unexpectedly and tastes like it may once have been a bug. You decide not to investigate. It's fine. Protein. Out on the deck, the officers are talking logistics. The ship's captain, an older man with a jaw like a marble bust, shouts orders while gesturing with a long scroll. You catch snippets. Supplies, harbor, wine delivery. That last one gets everyone's attention. Bad wine is still wine. Water is the real problem. Your skin is already starting to feel dry and itchy despite the sea spray. You'd think being surrounded by water would help, but Roman warships didn't carry much fresh water. What little they had was rationed strictly and stored in clay amphorae wedged into every conceivable corner. Some of those amphorae hadn't been cleaned in. Ever. To stretch the supply, the crew sometimes mixed in posca, a watered-down vinegar drink that, incredibly, was supposed to be hydrating. You take a sip from your own flask. It tastes like sadness and weak salad dressing. But it clears the mouth of fish taste, so that's something. You settle back on your crate, watching the horizon bob gently, and reflect on the Roman approach to seafaring nutrition. Historians still argue whether the empire's standard rations were designed for efficiency or just a very slow form of culinary punishment. Either way, you miss bread. Real bread. Warm, fluffy, with herbs. Stop. You're only making it worse. A sudden shout breaks your reverie. One of the younger crew has dropped his entire food bowl into the sea. It makes a tiny plop, and everyone nearby groans like a Greek chorus of disappointment. The officer nearby says nothing, just hands him another bowl without looking up. It's empty. Just to teach him a lesson. You wonder if that's the same officer who hit a man yesterday for sneezing too loud. Discipline here isn't exactly subtle. Later, a merchant galley passes by in the distance, bigger, slower, and definitely better fed. One of their crew waves. You wave back, imagining that right now they're enjoying olives, figs, maybe even wine that hasn't turned into vinegar. Someone beside you mutters, "Spoiled land snails," and everyone nods in solemn agreement. You reach into your pouch and find the date a kind sailor slipped you the day before. You've been saving it for this moment, one single wrinkled, glorious date. You bite into it. It's sweet, software almost juicy. For a second, you swear you hear music, then a gull swoops in and tries to steal it from your hand. You swat wildly, fall backwards, and drop it into a crack in the deck. You stare at the gap in disbelief. The crew laughs. Even the rats seem amused. You sit in silence, mourning, briefly. Dinner is more barley, this time with what might be a hint of garlic, or mold. Either way, your stomach handles it better than expected. A crewmate suggests you try catching your own fish tomorrow with a bit of string and luck. He claims to have landed a mackerel once, using just a shiny button and aggressive eye contact. You don't ask for proof. You just nod, add fishing to your to-do list, and dream of citrus you'll never taste. The sun dips below the horizon. You lean back against a coil of rope, belly not quite full but not quite empty, and let the salt air dry your cracked lips. Another day, another bowl of soggy grain behind you. By your fifth sunrise aboard the Roman warship, the glamour, if there ever was any, has well and truly peeled off like sunburnt skin. Your limbs ache, your feet have become indistinguishable from barnacles, and now nature calls. That's right. It's time to face what no military recruitment scroll ever dares mention. How exactly does one relieve oneself on a moving plank full of strangers? You learn quickly, because you have no choice. Roman warships, it turns out, don't feature the luxury of private latrines. What they do have is a shared, utterly exposed wooden beam slung low over the edge near the stern. It's affectionately known among the crew as the thunder plank. It is not a joke. It's a test of balance, dignity, and bladder control. You shuffle awkwardly to the back of the ship, timing your journey between gusts of wind and waves of nausea. The crew mostly avoids eye contact. This is a rite of passage, not a topic for polite conversation. As you perch, barely on the beam, waves splashing dangerously close, you realize two things. One, there's no toilet paper. And two, you're expected to bring your own sea sponge on a stick. Yes, really. The tersorium, as the Romans called it, is essentially a communal sponge attached to a stick, kept in a vinegar bucket and theoretically cleaned between uses. Theoretically. You eye it with suspicion. It eyes you back. You decide, for now, to rely on the drip, dry, and pray method. You've never missed moss so much in your life. The ship rocks. You grip the support rope tightly. A passing wave soaks your ankle, and you nearly lose your balance. Someone nearby chuckles. You do not. Later, back below deck, you overhear an older sailor share tips on timing bathroom visits. Always go during rowing breaks, he says. Less splash, more breeze. Another chimes in that Jupiter himself wouldn't use the beam during rough seas. Historians still argue whether Roman crews developed specific bowel schedules or simply learned to endure. What's worse is that the plumbing situation isn't limited to number 1 and 2. There are occasional accidents, buckets sloshing the wrong way, a rat nesting in someone's discarded tunic, and of course, the mystery puddle that appears and disappears mid-ship without explanation. You step in it twice. The second time, it's warm. You don't ask questions. Sanitation, in short, is a group effort. Buckets are emptied overboard. Decks are scrubbed with seawater and elbow grease. And once a day, you're ordered to rinse your body, somewhere private, if you can find a spare plank, and scrape off the grime with a dull knife and vinegar. It stings. You smell like an expired salad, but at least it beats being itchy. You watch as some of the more fastidious sailors oil their skin afterward, muttering prayers to Neptune. One man claims olive oil keeps barnacles off. You quietly wonder if it works on depression. At some point, the cook dumps waste from the galley over the rail, just as the wind changes. A fine mist of soup runoff and ancient fish sauce coats the deck. Your mouth is open. You taste regret. Cleaning duty is distributed randomly, usually determined by who's made the captain frown that morning. You get picked after accidentally knocking over a small keg of preserved onions. Your task? Scrub the midship planks near the anchor rigging, where everything collects. Armed with a sponge, vinegar bucket, and an attitude, you go to war with grime. The floor smells like seaweed, sweat, and despair. You hum a sad little tune to yourself and try not to picture what's under your fingernails. There's camaraderie in the filth, though. Another crewmate nearby jokes that in his last life he was a bathhouse attendant. And this is karma. Another tells a story of a sailor who got promoted just for inventing a new way to mop faster. You ask what it was. He shrugs. He tied a rat to a rope and let it run. You decide not to investigate the truth of that one. The afternoon brings sunshine, which means time to dry out gear and, shockingly, yourself. You lay back on the deck, arms splayed, feeling the warmth soak into your bones. For a fleeting moment, it's almost pleasant. Then someone opens a barrel of pickled cabbage too close to your nose, and the magic dies. Still, you find a quiet spot near the bow where the air smells mostly like salt and wood. You lean back, watching clouds drift across the sky. There's a soft slap of waves against the hull, the gentle creak of sails, the low murmur of sailors discussing whether sea serpents are just overgrown eels. You drift, not asleep, but not quite awake either. And for a second, just a second, it's not terrible. Then a seagull poops on your sandal. You sigh. This ship gives, and it takes. You're starting to recognize the officers by their boots alone. Not because you're particularly observant, but because those boots tend to hover threateningly close to your fingers whenever you miss a rowing cue. Today, though, you're being called above deck. Not for punishment, probably, but to meet the senior ranks. The centurion in charge of your deck, Marcus Secundus, is a man carved entirely from sinew and sarcasm. His leather armor creaks when he walks, and his expression has two settings: disappointed and murderously disappointed. He's known for his sharp tongue, sharper gladius, and a booming voice that makes dolphins flinch. You're summoned to stand in line with the other mid-tier rowers for roll call and inspection. Everyone attempts to look alert, muscular, and slightly less sunburnt than they actually are. Marcus walks past, eyes scanning like a hawk inspecting worms. He pauses at one man whose tunic is stained. Just stained. "Do you intend to duel Neptune with that disgrace?" he asks, deadpan. The man gulps and nods. Smart move. Behind Marcus comes the Triarch, the ship's captain. His name is Lucius Gellius, older, with graying curls and a permanent squint, like he's always judging whether the horizon is disappointing him. Unlike Marcus, Lucius rarely yells. His scariest moments are quiet, calculated, the kind of man who could sentence you to latrine duty with a gentle pat on the shoulder. You're introduced as recruit from the interior provinces. Lucius raises a single eyebrow, mutters, "At least he's not a poet," and moves on. You're not sure if it's a compliment or a threat. Probably both. Behind them trails the ship's priest. Yes, there's a priest. And he's in full regalia, white robes, amulets, and a rather sad wreath of wilted laurel. He sprinkles seawater on a small altar near the mast and mutters prayers to Neptune, Fortuna, and, just in case, Bacchus. You hear one of the rowers whisper, "That's because even the gods don't want to be on this ship." You smile, until Marcus hears it. Then you stop smiling very quickly. Later, you're given a lesson in Roman naval hierarchy, mostly through osmosis and eavesdropping. The ship runs on layers of authority, from Lucius at the top, down to Marcus, then various decurions, officer lights, and finally the humble naughty, the regular sailors who handle the ropes, sails, and yelling. Then there's you, the remex, the rower, glorified ballast with rhythm. Discipline is tight. Orders are to be obeyed instantly and completely, unless you enjoy extra rowing sessions or having your rations lost for the day. The stick, yes, there is literally a stick, is used more for dramatic effect than injury. But still, no one's eager to test that theory. That afternoon, you overhear a heated debate between two officers about whether to change course. One insists there's a pirate cove nearby and wants to steer clear. The other scoffs, saying it's just local superstition. Historians still argue whether Roman naval routes factored in folk tales, or if sailors just got creative when explaining delays. You try not to look too interested. Too much interest gets you noticed. Getting noticed gets you jobs. Speaking of which, you're assigned lookout duty for an hour. Up the mast you go, clutching the rope ladder and swaying dangerously. From the crow's nest, the sea stretches out in all directions, a glinting blanket of motion and mystery. You spot a cluster of flying fish, a distant merchant ship, and what may or may not be a floating barrel of olives. You report everything. The olives get a cheer. Back on deck, the crew gathers for a midday inspection of arms. No one expects a battle today, but Roman readiness is a religion. You're handed a short sword, gladius, and a helmet that smells like it's been stored in a goat pen. You're shown basic maneuvers, thrust, parry, step. In theory, you'll need it if the enemy gets too close. You practice clumsily while a senior sailor corrects your grip with the grace of a long-suffering uncle. No, 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 unless you want to stab your own toe, try again. You thank him. He shrugs. Better you than me. Later, you're roped into maintaining the armor racks, oiling the chainmail, inspecting the shields, checking for rust. It's tedious work, but a welcome break from rowing. You find a small dent in one of the breastplates, shaped suspiciously like a wine jug. Someone else mutters, "That was Marcus's birthday party." You don't ask. Dinner comes. Barley again, but also a strip of dried meat that tastes vaguely like lamb or old boot. Still, you chew slowly, trying not to think of the sponge stick. You end the day watching the officers drink diluted wine on the quarterdeck. They toast each other with practiced indifference, laughing too hard at mediocre jokes. You wonder if this is how they keep sane, or if they're already past that point. As the stars come out, you lay back on a coiled rope near the prow and let your eyes blur into the sky. The priest walks past, still murmuring something about Neptune. You catch a fragment. May the waters be calm and the crew less whiny. You whisper, Amen. You're starting to dream in drum beats. Every night, the rhythm echoes in your mind. Boom, pull, until it blurs into the rocking of the sea and the ache in your arms. And now, on the fourth day, the real drills begin. Morning starts earlier than usual. The sky is still the color of ash when the trumpet sounds, shrill, brassy, and much too close to your ear. You jerk awake, hit your head on the bench above you, again, and scramble up just in time to see the hortator and his drum already set in place. Today's focus: coordination. You and over 100 other oarsmen are expected to move as one organism. The officer overseeing the drill says it's like music, a symphony. You look around at your fellow rowers, bruised, exhausted, one man sneezing violently into his tunic. If this is music, it's the saddest flute solo in Roman history. The beat begins. Slow at first. You pull, return, pull, return. The trireme moves steadily, gliding over the water, then faster. The beat jumps. You can feel the tension as rowers across all tiers struggle to keep pace. Your oar crashes against the one behind it. Someone curses. An officer whistles sharply. Again! Your muscles burn, your blisters split a little more. But something odd starts to happen. After 20 minutes, the rhythm gets smoother. You're not thinking anymore. You're reacting. Your arms become ropes. Your legs brace automatically. The oar feels less like a torture device and more like a very heavy limb you didn't ask for. This is what Roman training does. It doesn't make you strong, not immediately. It makes you predictable. And in war, predictability is a weapon. During a break, a veteran next to you tells the story of the Battle of Mylae, First Punic War. Roman ships weren't the best sailors, he says, but they were disciplined. They invented the corvus, a boarding plank with a spike, so they could turn sea battles into land fights. Because, he says with a wink, we never lose on land. You're about to nod when a whistle cuts the air again. Back to position. This time, you're rowing to the rhythm of marching songs. The hortator chants lyrics in a sing-song voice. 1 arm, 2 oars, 3 curses, 4 sores. You lose count after that. The verses change often. Part encouragement, part comedy, part reminder that you haven't eaten in 3 hours. Midway through the drill, you're ordered to switch sides. You think it's a joke. It is not. Now rowing with your non-dominant arm leading, the entire motion feels wrong, like writing with your elbow. You stumble, you twist, your oar nearly knocks your neighbor's nose off. He glares. You mouth, sorry. He mouths something you decide not to interpret. An officer demonstrates proper rowing posture. Back straight, core engaged, wrists loose. You try. You fail. You try again. And then you're paired into a combat sync group. 3 rowers across the 3 levels who have to stay exactly in rhythm. If one slips, all 3 are punished. You meet your group, a veteran named Publius who smells like fermented leather, a sleepy teenager from Gaul who says nothing, and you, the dream team. Publius is the anchor. He sets the pace, grunts approval or disdain, and occasionally bursts into song. The teen just rows silently, looking perpetually 5 seconds from a nap. You try to keep up without accidentally punching yourself in the ribs with the oar. By midday, your arms are shaking. The drills stop. For now. You stagger to the shade, drink water that now tastes like warmed pennies, and chew on the same barley cake you've been hating since Tuesday. It sticks to your teeth. Everything sticks to your teeth. An announcement comes. Tomorrow, mock battle drill. Everyone groans in unison, like they rehearsed it. You overhear an officer arguing with a junior over whether the opposing enemy crew gets shields this time. They cheated last week, he insists. Brought javelins. We said no javelins. Historians still argue whether these mock drills were more about team building or officer ego management. Based on what you've seen, it's definitely both. That evening, your arms feel like carved stone, useless, heavy, but oddly satisfying. You've survived the worst of the rowing drills, mostly. One man fainted halfway through and rolled into a coil of rope. He's now called Rope Boy. He doesn't seem to mind. Publius claps you on the back and says, "Not bad for a land walker." Coming from him, that's practically a poem. Before bed, you pass by the hortator tuning his drum with practiced taps. You think he looks at you approvingly, but it might also be windburn distorting his face. Still, you nod politely. The stars overhead are sharp and clear tonight, scattered like salt on black velvet. You stretch out, listening to the creak of the wood, the distant hoot of a night bird, and the rhythmic groans of 100 sleeping men with sore everything. You drift off, arms still twitching, dreaming of oars that row themselves in beds that don't splinter. At first, the sky just looks a little moodier than usual, grayish, stretched thin like old linen. But you don't think much of it, until the first gust of wind knocks a loosely tied crate off the stern and into someone's lap. The weather is changing, and fast. A low murmur runs through the crew, like the start of a bad rumor. You hear muttered prayers. The ship's priest suddenly looks very, very busy. Within the hour, the sea goes from moody to outright dramatic. Waves slap harder, the sails ripple with agitation, and the oars, normally smooth and obedient, start to catch at strange angles, jerking your body like a badly synced puppet. "Pull together," Marcus shouts from the deck, his voice fighting the wind. "Don't make Neptune regret sparing you last time." You're not sure when the last time was, but judging by the look in his eyes, it didn't go well. The sky darkens. Rain starts in light spatters, then escalates to an aggressive patter that soaks tunics in minutes. The ship groans with each sway. Someone behind you is singing softly, a lullaby in Greek. You don't understand the words, but you understand the feeling. Please, not today. Roman warships weren't built for comfort in storms. Sleek and narrow, their design favors speed and agility, not stability. When the sea rises, these ships bounce like twigs in a fountain. You cling to your bench, soaked, shivering, and trying to remember if you tied down your gear. The hortator doesn't drum during storms. No point. Rhythm collapses into chaos. Instead, officers shout orders: row faster, row slower, brace port, brace starboard. You lose track of directions and start obeying whichever voice is loudest and angriest. Lightning flickers on the horizon. The crew collectively flinches. Some men mutter invocations to Jupiter, god of thunder. Others call on Neptune. A few hedge their bets and throw in Bacchus for good measure, in case it's their last day and they'd like to go out tipsy. You grip your oar so tightly your knuckles ache. Every wave threatens to yank it from your hands. At one point, a freak swell smashes the prow, sending a burst of seawater straight into your face. Salty, briny, a mouthful of Poseidon's punch. You gag. You row. The storm hits full stride by late afternoon. Wind howls through the rigging. The sail is lowered and tied off to prevent damage, leaving propulsion entirely to the rowers. AKU. Great. Visibility shrinks. You can barely see the man 2 benches ahead, Rain lashes like needles. You hear a yell. Someone's fallen. A crewman slides across the deck and slams into a barrel. He's fine, but the barrel isn't. Pickled onions everywhere. Tragedy. The captain bellows something unintelligible. You think it was hold course, or possibly hug the mast, or maybe just why me? Either way, you keep rowing. Hours pass. The world becomes nothing but cold, effort, and adrenaline. You lose sense of time. All you know is your arms are moving, your legs are planted, and the ship hasn't tipped yet. Then, suddenly, it eases. The rain softens, the wind shifts, the sea calms, if only slightly. You slump forward, spent. Your fingers are pruny. Your face is raw from sea spray and panic. A hush falls over the crew, exhausted, dazed, and quietly grateful. The priest climbs the mast and ties a fresh wreath to the top. A few sailors clap. You join in weakly. Superstition or not, it feels earned. Later, you hear sailors trading tales. One swears he saw a sea serpent breach near the bow. Another claims he tied himself to his oar and dozed off mid-storm. A third just holds up a fish he caught bare-handed from the deck and refuses to explain. Historians still debate the accuracy of sailor storm stories, but it's clear these tales served a purpose. Survival wasn't just physical, it was psychological. You needed stories to keep your sanity afloat. The crew sets to work repairing minor damage. Loose ropes, a cracked rail, one unfortunate crate of garlic smashed beyond recognition. You help retie the main rigging, hands fumbling from cold. One man sings a slow, haunting tune as he coils rope, voice rough but comforting. The words are about a ship that sails into the underworld and returns with golden light. You don't know if it's myth or metaphor, but it sticks in your head. Dinner is hot tonight, a rare luxury after a storm. Lentils, thick and mushy, with what might be dried leeks. You don't ask. You just eat. Later, as the moon peeks through thinning clouds, you lie back against a dry patch of deck, wrapped in your damp cloak, and feel something strange. Pride. You survived the storm. You're still here. Your ears still ring with the wind's howl, but your heart is a little steadier. And as you drift to sleep, the priest walks past, murmuring thanks to the gods. You murmur one too, just in case. The next day starts like any other. Sore limbs, musty tunic, and a breakfast of chewy sadness. You're sitting on a bench gnawing your barley ration, when suddenly, a shout rings out. Smoke! Not the relaxing kind, not the incense-waving priest kind. Thick, black, urgent smoke rising from below deck, curling into the air with a very specific message. Something is on fire. You freeze. Fire on a wooden warship isn't just a problem, it's a catastrophe waiting to eat you alive. Everyone knows this. It's why open flames are heavily restricted. It's why the cook swears he never leaves the brazier unattended. And it's why, as the first officer starts yelling orders, half the crew is already running with buckets, and the other half is just running. You scramble toward the source. The smoke's coming from the galley area, where meals are heated and the kitchen is essentially a box of bad decisions. Someone, no one will admit who, knocked over the brazier during last night's storm cleanup. A cloth sack caught fire, then a rope, then someone's sandal. The air is thick. You cover your nose with your tunic and grab a bucket. Roman fire buckets are, naturally, made of leather and shaped like sad helmets. You form a human chain, passing water from barrels to the blaze. The water is sloshing, the deck is slippery, and someone is still yelling that it was definitely not their sandal. You throw a bucket's worth of water on the smoldering mess. It hisses. Steam fills the space. One of the officers uses a spear shaft to knock down the burning sack. The flames finally die. leaving behind a charred mess and a smell that can only be described as roasted despair. No one's hurt. Not seriously. A few scorched eyebrows, a lot of coughing, and one man wailing over the loss of his lucky rope bracelet. Cleanup begins. The ship smells like burnt rope and sour vinegar. You help scrub the blackened planks, the ash staining your hands and sticking under your nails. It takes hours to clear. By the end, you look like you've been digging in a volcanic trench. Afterward, the ship's cook, a wiry man with exactly 3 teeth, makes a formal apology. He presents the captain with a fresh piece of flatbread and promises it won't happen again. The captain takes the bread, eats it slowly, says nothing. Everyone takes that as a minor miracle. The priest also steps in, sprinkling seawater and murmuring prayers to Vulcan, god of fire, just in case. Better to bribe him than blame him, he says with a wink. You wonder if there's a god for charred sandals. Probably not. Later that afternoon, once the air clears, you find yourself on bucket duty again, this time refilling the fire barrels. Each corner of the ship has one now, newly designated, ready in case the flames return. It's a good precaution, but hauling seawater in sloshing containers? Less fun, especially when a rogue wave tips half the contents onto your feet. One of your crewmates jokes, "At least your toes won't catch fire." You smile, but only with your eyes. The rest of the day is filled with quiet chores. Morale has taken a hit. There's something about fire that unnerves sailors more than battle. It's the randomness, the way it turns order into panic in seconds. You pass time tightening knots on the sail rigging, pretending you know what you're doing. A senior sailor checks your work, unties it silently, and redoes it with one hand while balancing a fig in the other. You're both humbled and slightly impressed. By sunset, things are almost back to normal. A fresh pot of stew is prepared. No brazier this time, just a heated stone platform. It tastes like herbs, ash, and victory. As the stars come out, someone produces a lyre. Where it came from, no one knows. A tune fills the night air, soft and wavering. The crew gathers loosely, heads nodding to the rhythm, eyes heavy. One sailor sings a low melody about a ship that outran fire and storm and sea monsters, only to be sunk by love. It makes no sense, but it fits the moment. You lie back, shoulder blades pressing against the still warm wood, watching the smoke stains fade into shadow. The ship is still here. You're still here. And tomorrow, you might even laugh about it. The next morning arrives with a different kind of energy. The air is tense, the ship strangely quiet except for the sound of shifting armor and whispered oaths. The word has spread. There's another ship on the horizon. And this one isn't friendly. You squint toward the east. At first it looks like a blot on the sea, but it grows, slowly, steadily, until you can make out the long shape, the oars. It's another trireme or something close to it, and it's heading your way with purpose. No sail unfurled. Just men rowing. Hard. You don't need a full tactical briefing to know what that means. Battle stations. The drum doesn't start this time. Instead, orders come barked and sharp. Officers rush across the deck, distributing shields and helmets. You're handed a short sword again, same as in training, but this time, it's heavier. Real. Less of a teaching tool, more of a last resort. Stay in line, someone mutters. Row when told. Hold your oar. Don't be a hero. Easy. Then the yelling starts. From the enemy ship, you hear shouts, frenzied, high-pitched, and possibly fueled by too much vinegar wine. They're already banging their own drums. The rhythm is chaotic, almost manic. You glance around. No one's panicking outright, but everyone's breathing faster. Eyes wide, sweat already pooling, and not from heat. You take your place on the bench. Marcus stalks past behind you, checking rows, tightening helmet straps, smacking one man on the shoulder with a growl. Row like Jupiter's on your tail. You row harder than you have all week. Every pull sends the ship lunging forward. The enemy vessel closes the gap fast. Water sprays up between the oars. The creaking of the ship merges with the creaking of your ribs. And just when you think your arms will fall off, brace. The call comes seconds before impact. A crash, splinters flying, a crunch that shakes your bones. Your ship veers slightly, glancing off the side of the enemy trireme. Hooks fly through the air, grappling lines, sharp and barbed. They catch. The ships are now stuck, side by side. Boarding begins. The Romans don't wait to be invited. Your officers leap the gap, shields raised, swords drawn. The enemy crew, Greeks maybe, pirates, no one's sure, meets them with shouting and swinging. You're told to stay on the bench unless ordered, but of course, that rule lasts 2 minutes. Someone drops their weapon near you. Someone else yells for help. Then a large, heavily bearded man with an axe jumps down from the other ship and starts sprinting straight toward you. You do what anyone would do. Scream. Throw your barley cake at him and duck. He slips. On the barley. Crashes headfirst into the oar in front of you and collapses in a heap. You blink, then slowly retrieve your cake. 5-second rule still applies, even in war. The fight is fast and messy. No formations, no epic speeches. Just the clang of metal, the thud of bodies, and the unmistakable noise of someone tripping over an anchor rope and swearing in 3 languages. You try to help, pulling ropes, handing up weapons, dragging a shield to a panicking teenager. At one point, you end up face to face with an enemy sailor who's just as confused as you are. You both shrug and back away. Fair. One of your officers swings across the gap with the grace of a theater actor, lands with a yell, promptly falls flat on his back. Someone shouts, 10 out of 10. A brief laugh from both crews before they go back to stabbing. Eventually, your side gains control. Slowly. One of the enemy officers throws down his sword. A whistle sounds. The remaining crew either surrender or jump overboard. You exhale. Only now do you realize your hands are shaking. Your oar is cracked. Your tunic is ripped. There's a smear of something on your arm. You don't check what it is. The rest of the day is cleanup. The 2 ships remain lashed for now. The victors search the enemy vessel, looking for supplies, prisoners, maybe treasure. You find a barrel of dried figs and pocket one. You've earned it. Historians still argue whether these naval skirmishes were part of larger campaigns or just personal vendettas between captains with too much pride and not enough therapy. Either way, it felt real enough. You help tie the captured ship to yours. Some prisoners are brought aboard. They sit, heads low, some injured, some glaring. You're not sure what happens next. That's up to the officers. Back at your bench, you find your water flask crushed. Your gear bag is missing, and someone took your sandal. You sit, barefoot, exhausted, and weirdly alive. And for the first time, you realize you survived your first battle. It wasn't glorious. It wasn't epic, but it was yours. And that fig tastes better than anything has in days. It takes less than a day for the sea to erase all signs of the fight, except from your muscles. Everything aches, shoulders, thighs, even your neck, which you didn't know could be sore in quite this way. You wake up feeling like you've been gently trampled by a well-mannered elephant. But there's no time to whine. The ship is damaged. The captain wants speed. And with no sail today, too risky after yesterday's chaos, it's all up to the oars. That means you. Row faster or drown slower. The sun hasn't risen yet, and already you're gripping the oar with raw, blistered hands. The drumbeat is back, but slower now, deliberate. It's not a training rhythm, it's a rescue rhythm. A get us out of this before the other, pirates show up rhythm. You row hard, everyone does. The air is thick with effort and sweat, and the quiet grunts of exhausted men pretending they're not exhausted. The ship groans as it cuts through the waves, pushing onward like a wounded wolf limping home. The captured ship trails behind on a tether. Some of your crew are aboard it now, managing the line, rowing it in tandem. It's eerie, watching the twin vessel mirror your strokes, like rowing with your reflection, if your reflection had a busted mast and scorch marks. At first, the sea is kind, a slow swell, gentle breezes. But then, as if the gods feel you've had it too easy, the wind shifts, the waves grow restless. The trireme begins to yaw, listing just slightly, but enough to disrupt the rhythm. A man near the prow vomits into his lap. Another follows suit, aiming for the sea and missing. The deck becomes a minefield of foul puddles and increasingly inventive curses. The hortator keeps the beat. If he's tired, he doesn't show it. His drum echoes through the hull like a heartbeat on the edge of panic. You keep rowing. The officer shouts, "Pull like your mother's watching," which is somehow both confusing and effective. You dig in harder. You think of land, not the glorious return or the cheering welcome, but the quiet parts. Grass, shade, a meal that doesn't come in the shape of a crusty puck, maybe even a dry bed. You don't even need a mattress, just something that doesn't give splinters. But the sea has other plans. Around mid-morning, one of the ropes from the captured ship snaps. A loud twang, a shout, and then the tether lashes across the deck, nearly hitting a sailor in the face. The ship rocks sharply. Everyone leans the wrong way. Water crashes over the starboard rail. Buckets tumble. Someone's sandal floats by. For a terrifying second, the ship teeters, then rights itself. Silence. You hold your breath. Then someone mutters, "Nice swim," and the tension breaks into exhausted laughter. Even the captain smirks. But the damage is done. The enemy ship is now drifting. You're ordered to release the line and let it go. The surviving prisoners are transferred, hurriedly, with some less than gentle shoving. A few complain in broken Latin. One just spits and sits down. You watch the broken trireme drift away, slowly swallowed by distance and mist. There's a strange finality to it, like watching a ghost ship sail back to whatever part of your life you'll never revisit. The rest of the day is one long push. The rowing doesn't stop. Every now and then you get a break. 2 minutes, maybe 3. You slump forward, muscles twitching. Someone hands you a fig. Someone else slaps your back, says, "Still breathing?" and doesn't wait for an answer. You lose track of time. The sea and sky blur into one color. Your arms move automatically. Your body finds a rhythm that bypasses your brain. You stop feeling individual pains. It becomes one dull, humming ache that settles into your bones like an unwelcome house guest. At one point, you hear a sailor whisper a prayer to Mercury, god of messengers and travelers. "Just get us home," he says, "and I'll never touch another dice game again." A bold lie, but a hopeful one. Historians still debate how far Roman triremes could travel in a single push. Some claim 50 miles in a day. Others argue it was far less in battle-damaged conditions. Today, you feel like you've crossed the entire known world in a wooden shoe. By evening, land appears, faint at first, a line of gray against the darker sea, but unmistakable, a small port, possibly friendly, possibly indifferent. You don't care. It's land. The rowing slows. Your arms tremble as you ease the oar back one last time. The drumbeat stops. Blessed silence. Cheers go up, ragged, uneven, more wheeze than roar, but real. You made it. You're alive. You may never move your shoulders again, but you're alive. As the ship coasts into harbor, you sit back, eyes half closed, watching the sky shift from blue to amber. A gull lands near your bench. It pecks at your sock and then waddles away in disappointment. You don't stop it. You earned this moment. Rowing hell is behind you. For now. You barely remember how you got off the ship. One moment, you're watching the harbor draw nearer like a mirage. The next, your legs are trying to remember what land feels like. They wobble beneath you in protest, as if you've suddenly switched bodies with a newborn deer. You step onto the dock, solid ground. Except, it's not solid. It tilts. The world tilts. The horizon pulses gently, and your knees tremble in rhythm with invisible waves. You grip a post to steady yourself and whisper to no one in particular, "I'm walking like the ship's still moving." "Because you are," someone replies. Takes a while to wear off. Try not to fall into the fish crates. You look down. Fish crates. You nod. Noted. The port is small, just a cluster of warehouses, a couple of taverns, and the kind of local shrine that smells like 1,000 candles have been extinguished inside it without anyone ever opening a window. There are dock workers, too, mostly older men with the leathery skin of those who've never been more than 20 feet from the sea. They watch your ship dock with casual disinterest, like this is the 50th battered trireme to limp in this week. It might be. Once you've convinced your legs to more or less function, you're assigned to the unloading crew. You were hoping for rest. You were wrong. There are amphorae to be carried, ropes to be coiled, sails to be repaired. You help tie down the battered oars and retrieve a bag of tools someone left hanging from the rudder. It swings and smacks you in the nose. Welcome to shore duty. A group of prisoners, those captured from the enemy vessel, are herded onto the dock. They're bruised but alive, mumbling in mixed dialects. An officer attempts to question them. It's not going well. One answers in Greek, another in Carthaginian, and a third just spits again and lies down. Eventually, you're asked to help with interpretation, despite the fact that you only speak bad Latin and slightly worse Latin. Still, they assign you to one particularly tired-looking prisoner who mutters just enough for you to guess he's from Rhodes. "What's your name?" you ask. He glares at you. "Captain," he replies. "No, your name." He shrugs. "Today? Just tired." You like him immediately. Back on the ship, you help clean the deck. Again. Always the deck. Always new stains. The soot from the fire has mixed with sea salt and dried fish. The resulting smell is unique. You call it burnt Neptune. While scrubbing, you overhear two officers arguing about what to report back to command. One wants to say the enemy ship was a scouting vessel from a known pirate ring. The other thinks it was just some ambitious smugglers. They go back and forth for a while, then agree to blame it on unaffiliated aggressive forces, which you assume is Roman for people we didn't like. Historians still debate how the Roman Navy documented minor battles. Some records are detailed, others vague, and many exaggerated to make commanders look heroic or, at minimum, not incompetent. You're pretty sure your captain is aiming for the latter. By mid-afternoon, you're granted shore leave. Kind of. 2 hours, Marcus grunts. Don't disappear. And if you get drunk, make sure it's near enough to drag you back. You take off with a few other crewmen, feet still unsure, brain buzzing with the idea of not being on a ship. The port tavern is cramped, loud, and perfect. There's a crooked table with room for 3, so you and 2 rowers take it immediately. The menu consists of wine, slightly worse wine, and olives that have seen better centuries. You choose the wine. It's bad, spectacularly bad, but it's land wine, and that makes it magical. You sip slowly, savoring the taste of freedom, however brief. Around you, sailors laugh, argue, and toss dice. Someone starts playing a flute. Someone else starts singing over it, off-key and enthusiastic. Your mind drifts. How many days has it been? 4? 5? You try to count backward but get lost somewhere between the sponge stick and the fire. Time at sea warps you. Everything becomes before the storm or after the crash. No dates, no clocks, just events and meals. Mostly barley. One of the younger crew pulls out a tiny carved charm from his pouch. A turtle, worn smooth from being handled. He says he carved it during downtime. Says it's lucky. You nod, thinking about all the weird tokens on the ship. Bones, feathers, bits of pottery tied to belts. Soldiers and sailors alike trust in the small and strange. You show him your fig pit. He raises his eyebrows. That all you've got? It survived a battle and a seagull. He nods solemnly. Fair. Eventually, your time runs out. Back at the ship, the sun is dipping low. The prisoners are secured. The repairs are done. The food stores, such as they are restocked. You board again, heavier than before in the legs, lighter in the soul. Marcus catches your eye. Did you behave? You nod. Did you drink? You hesitate, then nod again. He grunts. Good. As you settle into your spot and the harbor slips behind you, you realize something strange. You're almost used to this now. The motion, the smell, the rhythm. You've gone from stranger to crewmate, and maybe, just maybe, you're ready for tomorrow. The mood on the ship is, somehow, celebratory. Not that Roman warships were known for their party planning, but after surviving a skirmish, a storm, and the great onboard fire of definitely someone else's fault, morale has lifted just enough for the officers to loosen the ropes, so to speak. Word spreads. Tonight, there will be wine. Not a lot, and certainly not good, but enough to call it a celebration. You're not sure if it's to honor the victory, distract from the smell, or prevent another mutiny by grumpiness, but you don't care. You're ready. Your throat has tasted nothing but seawater, vinegar, and barley mush for days. Even bad wine sounds divine. As the sun lowers behind the waves, the crew gathers on the upper deck, an unusual privilege. The sails are tied down, the oars stowed, and for once the ship just floats, letting the breeze nudge it gently like a child rocking a toy boat in a tub. Someone uncorks the first amphora. The scent is potent, sour, sharp, with notes of clay and despair. This is old wine, possibly older than your captain's bad eye. But it pours, and that's what matters. The mugs are mismatched. Wood, metal, one suspiciously made from a carved-out turnip. But every man gets a portion. You raise your cup with the rest, and someone shouts, "To the gods who rode with us!" A few laugh. One sailor yells, "To the figs!" That gets a cheer. You drink. It is, without question, terrible. Your mouth puckers. Your eyes water. It tastes like someone fermented raisins inside a goat's boot. But it's cold, and it's real. And for once, it's not just hydration with a vengeance. The music starts soon after, one man with a battered lyre, another beating a rhythm on an empty oil drum. It's not in tune. It's not even in time. But it's alive. Sailors begin to dance, in the loosest definition of the word. Awkward hopping, shuffling feet, flailing limbs. like a herd of sleepy goats discovering rhythm for the first time. You're dragged into it by Publius, the veteran rower who once threatened to throw you overboard for breathing too loud. You dance like a fisherman's curse, he grins. You smell like one, you fire back. He laughs. It's the first time you've seen him do that. Food follows, if you can call it that. Roasted chickpeas, burnt, some fried dough balls, mysterious, and a stew that smells shockingly decent until someone reveals the meat is probably fish or snake. You eat it anyway. The captain makes a speech, not too long, not too dramatic. He thanks the crew, praises Neptune, curses the enemy, and promises landfall within 2 days if the weather holds. And if it doesn't, he adds, we'll just shout louder than the storm. You like that? One of the younger recruits tries to recite a poem he scribbled on a wax tablet. It's about oars and destiny and a girl named Livia. It's not good, but everyone claps anyway. Livia must have been something. As the stars blink awake overhead, the ship quiets down. Wine fades to water. Music fades to murmurs. The sea becomes a whisper again. You sit at the prow with a few others, passing around a sack of dried fruit. One man tells a story about a sea god who turned into a dolphin to woo a princess. Another insists he once saw a mermaid who stole his soap. No one challenges either version. The sea has earned its fair share of weird truths. Historians still argue whether Roman crews held celebrations like this. Some claim it was rare, discouraged even. Others point to evidence of occasional feasts, ritual toasts, even spontaneous plays performed by crewmates in costume. Read stolen tunics and too much imagination. Tonight, though, it feels utterly real. You find a quiet corner of the deck, watching your ship rock gently under the stars. Someone's snoring behind you. Someone else is softly humming that song from the stormy night, the one about the ship in the underworld. The sea glows faintly in the moonlight, slick and endless. You smile, tipsy from bad wine and decent company. Tomorrow might bring orders, another drill, a new problem to solve. But tonight the ship feels less like a prison and more like a bizarre floating home. And the rats haven't stolen your blanket. So really, what more could you ask for? The morning after celebration has a name among the crew: Scrape Day. It is not glamorous. The ship smells like wine-soaked rope, spilled stew, and one unfortunate sailor who fell asleep on a sardine crate. The air is thick with groans and the unmistakable sound of regret. You wake up tangled in your own cloak, one sandal missing, and something sticky in your hair. You don't want to know. You just want water, and not the salty kind that's trying to kill you daily. But there's no time to wallow. Deck duty, someone mutters, nudging you with their foot. Barnacles won't scrape themselves. Ah, yes, the glorious task of maintenance. When a ship spends days at sea, its hull collects passengers, uninvited ones, barnacles, seaweed, slime, and things that defy scientific explanation begin clinging to the underside. If left unchecked, they slow the ship and attract unwanted attention from larger things, with teeth. So, you join the scraping crew, which sounds slightly more fun than it is. The ship is docked in a shallow cove now, tilted slightly for access. You're handed a long pole with a rough metal blade at the end. Basically, a glorified spoon on a stick. The job is to lean over the edge and scrape at the hull until it looks slightly less like Poseidon's neglected garden. You start strong. 3 scrapes in, you're optimistic. By the 7th, your arms are noodles. The barnacles fight back. The seaweed taunts you. A crab waves one claw in defiance before falling off into the surf. Around you, the others grunt and swear in between strokes. The mood is oddly cheerful, like communal punishment you're all too tired to resist. One sailor hums an off-key tune. Another tells a story about a guy who once found a gold coin stuck to the hull. Everyone laughs. No one believes him. You pause for breath and spot something drifting near the surface. A boot. A very nice boot. Not yours. You retrieve it with your pole. The crew gathers to admire it. Leather. Stitching. Definitely not standard issue. This belonged to a centurion, someone says, or a pirate king, or a guy with one foot. Either way, you keep it. Might trade for something better later, like a full piece of dry bread or half an apology from Publius. After scraping comes ego maintenance, also known as debate hour. With no immediate crisis, the crew shifts into their second favorite pastime after surviving, arguing about things no one can prove. Today's topic? Plato versus Pluto. A sailor insists Pluto, god of the underworld, is real and lives under Sicily. Another says Plato, the philosopher, made better points about the soul. You sit nearby, eating dried peas, watching the argument unravel like a poorly tied rope. Pluto punishes the wicked, one man declares, pointing skyward for some reason. Plato questions the nature of wickedness. The other shouts, slapping his own forehead as if that seals the deal. Someone starts sketching imaginary cave shadows on the deck with a stick. Another uses bits of fig to demonstrate souls leaving bodies. You quietly vote for silence. The argument eventually ends in the most Roman way possible, with both parties agreeing to settle it later by wrestling. You return to the prow, staring out at sea. The waves are calm. The sun hangs low. You've got an afternoon free for once, and nowhere to be but here. So, you clean. You find your gear, what's left of it, untangle your cloak, patch a tear in your tunic with borrowed thread. It's not pretty, but it holds. You shine your borrowed gladius with sand and spit until it gleams slightly. You braid your hair, or try. The results are abstract, but at least it's not sticking to your neck anymore. Nearby, someone is writing, carving letters into a plank with a small knife. It's a poem, maybe, or a letter to someone they'll never send. You ask who it's for. They say, anyone who reads. That feels about right. By evening, the ship is clean. Well, cleaner. The smell has faded from fish wine catastrophe to normal sea misery. The priest burns something fragrant near the mast. You think it's sage. Or dry laundry. You settle in for sleep. Tomorrow you set sail again. But tonight, the sea is quiet. The ship is light, and your blanket is exactly where you left it. You awaken not to shouting or the crash of waves, but to birdsong. Faint and distant, but unmistakable. The kind of high-pitched warble that only seems to exist near land. And sure enough, as you climb the ladder to the upper deck, blinking against the early morning sun, you see it, the coast. A real one this time. Not a speck on the horizon, not a false promise through fog. A full, stretching shoreline, dotted with trees, ridges, and small villas that shimmer like pottery in the gold light. You made it. The crew is already busy. Ropes are being coiled, sails raised in a relaxed, almost celebratory fashion. No barking, no panicked rowing, just the calm efficiency of men who know the trip is almost over. You join the rhythm. Your muscles respond without protest. For once, your body knows exactly what to do and doesn't hate you for it. The captain stands at the helm, arms crossed, a slight smile twitching under his beard. He looks like he might say something inspirational, then turns and starts yelling about docking protocols. Classic. As the ship nears the harbor, you catch sight of another Roman vessel already moored. A small crowd bustles along the dock, Workers, traders, a few off-duty soldiers. A boy selling lemons shouts at no one in particular. You squint, trying to imagine yourself on land again. Solid earth, real food, silence without creaking wood and muffled groaning. And then it hits you. You're being discharged. Not permanently, probably. Roman military contracts aren't exactly famous for being flexible. But for now, your week aboard this oar-propelled nightmare is coming to an end. Marcus finds you amid the disembarking crew. He gives you a nod. "Didn't think you'd last," he says without malice. Then, with a faint grin, "Well rowed." That's practically a poem coming from him. The process of leaving is chaotic in a gentle way. Gear is sorted, names checked off a wax tablet, rations distributed. Yours includes another hard biscuit, almost ceremonial at this point, and half a dried plum that's more pit than fruit. You're handed a small pouch of bronze coins. Back pay, technically. You weigh it in your palm and think, this paid for the blisters, the fire, the sponge stick. Barely. You're also given a small wooden token, marked with the ship's emblem, a souvenir or a formality. You tuck it into your belt. You watch as others depart. Some rejoin their legions inland. Some get pulled into new ship assignments. A few vanish into the streets like smoke. Publius slaps your back and heads toward a nearby tavern, promising to drink something unidentifiable in your honor. You believe him. You take your first real steps onto land. The dock tilts slightly under your feet, even though it doesn't. Your brain hasn't caught up yet. You steady yourself, breathe in the unfamiliar scent of dry earth and citrus, and look up at the sun. You survived. 1 week on a Roman warship. It wasn't heroic, it wasn't noble, but you made it through with your limbs intact, your sense of humor bruised but functional, and a fig pit in your pouch that still feels like good luck. Historians might never know your name, but the sea does. The sea remembers every fool who dared row across it in a splintered bathtub full of olives and optimism. And you? You'll remember the rhythm, the beat, the strange quiet in the dark, the moment when oars stopped and stars blinked overhead like 1,000 tiny gods watching you exhale. Now, one last stretch, one final breath. Let it go. You find a place near the edge of the harbor, low wall, shady tree, nobody asking for help. You sit, legs dangling just above the tide. A soft breeze picks up, cooling your face. You close your eyes. For the first time in a week, your body is still. No drumbeat, no shouting, no rowing, just the hush of waves brushing gently against the dock, the distant clatter of life continuing, a seagull calling lazily as it drifts overhead. You stretch slowly, letting the tension melt down your back like wax. Your hands, blistered and worn, rest in your lap. You feel the sun warm your shoulders. You smell earth instead of rope, dust instead of fish. Everything slows. Even the memories of the ship feel distant now, like something that happened to another version of you. One that belonged to the sea for a little while. One that now knows the rhythm of oars, the weight of silence between storms, the quiet miracle of a full breath. You tilt your head back and sigh. You're not on the warship anymore. You're here, safe, steady, still. And as your breath deepens and the world softens into the gentle blur of sleep, you remember just one more thing. You rode through it all. And now, you can finally rest. Sweet dreams.